It's time now for French Connections, our weekly look at the intricacies of life in France. And for that, I'm joined by Florence Villeminot.
Hi, Rochelle.
Flo, hi. And this week, we're going to focus on a French exception at France's fertility rate. Compared to their European neighbours, French women have a lot of babies.
They certainly do, and it's kind of paradoxical because, we think about French people as being really pessimistic, and yet they're the baby-making champions of Europe. And France is actually quite proud of its fertility rate, which hovers right around 2.1 babies per woman, which is considered the replacement rate in developed countries. Let's look at the figures from 2014. You'll see that the French birth rate is really quite high compared to countries like Germany and Italy, for instance, which are facing an alarming decline in birth rates. It's even higher than the US. Now, there was a slight drop in 2015, but if you talk to new parents, they'll say this isn't a case of the baby blues.
You have to have confidence in the future, and making babies makes things better. You have to push fate in the right direction.
Well, it's not that French people have special baby-making powers or are particularly fertile, Flo. It's that there's very generous welfare policy that encourages people to have babies. So the more kids you pop out, the more money you get, basically.
That's right. It's a generous system that's been around since the 1930s. Now, the government put this system in place to boost the birth rate, so it's a system of family allowances with tax incentives. It's called les allocations familiales, and you start receiving them upon the birth of your second child. Now, initially, this was a universal system, but in 2015, facing a major budget deficit, the socialist government decided to reform the system to make it income dependent. Essentially, higher income families receive less. Let's take a look at the situation for lower income families. You can see once you get a second child, you get 130 euros a month, and you can see it increases with every additional child. Now, as you can imagine, this costs the state a lot of money. It costs roughly 12 billion euros a year, a high cost that's worth it if you ask new mothers.
When you look at what money you have left at the end of the month, it makes you think twice about having kids, but with family benefits, it really makes a difference.
Well, it's not just the tax breaks and cash handouts. There's also a diverse network of childcare options to help women who go back to work.
That's right, because parental leave in France isn't as high as other countries. Maternity leave, for instance, is just 16 weeks of paid salary. You do get 100% of your salary. Now, paternity and welcoming leave is 11 calendar days, consecutive calendar days, not that much. Now, the real difference is that in France, the state makes it easier for women to go back to work by helping with childcare. And it's actually in the interest of the state because studies show that the more active women are in the workplace, well, the more babies they have because they feel financially secure enough. And so, the more women work, the more babies you have in the future, the more workers you have in the future, and the more they'll fund the welfare state.
Interesting. Well, the most popular childcare option is something called crèche.
Right, a crèche. It's our word du jour. It's a very important word here. It's actually the same word for the nativity scene, but in this context, a crèche is a child care center, a day nursery that's actually subsidized by the state for children under the age of 3 years old. Now, the problem is spots are really rare in crèches. In fact, there are only 16 spots for every 100 toddlers. And the joke is you need to sign up before you get pregnant, but a lot of people don't think it's funny.
This. Yeah, it's ridiculous, the waiting times. So you do really have to get in there before you even start planning to have a baby, right?
That's right. And let's actually just listen to a director of one of these crèches. She'll show you just how crazy it is.
So this pile corresponds to babies who aren't born yet. It's quite a lot. And this pile is all the kids that are on a waiting list. There are around 70 of them.
It's really long. Municipal authorities told me the average wait is 8 months. That means you have to get organized with the grandparents or hire a babysitter, but that's more expensive.
I think it should be like public schools. Every child should have a place once they're a year old.
Wow, some of those waiting times are just crazy. So there you have it, France's baby boom secret, getting women back to work. That said, Flo, more and more women are delaying having a baby to focus on their careers.
That's right. Trends are really changing in baby making. Look at the average age of French mothers. It's 30.3 years. That's 4 years older than in the 70s. And in 2015, 1 in 20 babies, so 5% of babies, were born to mothers aged over 40. Let's listen to an analyst tell us why.
Women, especially women with higher education, want to have a life before having children. Globally, future mums want to have a professional career before starting a family.
I'm 35 and I'm expecting my first child. My job was definitely a factor that made me wait. I wanted to have a career first.
So although France is quite modern when it comes to getting women back to work, it's still quite conservative in other areas.
For sure. For instance, it's comparatively difficult for homosexuals or single people to have children. In vitro fertilization, for instance, is very controlled and surrogacy is completely banned. So people often drive across the border to Belgium or Spain to seek alternatives. That being said, though, France is still a model for lots of countries. You see lots of delegations from countries that are struggling with an aging population, like Japan, come to France to try and learn France's baby-making secret.
That's interesting. Flo, thank you so much for that, Florence Villeminot there. That was French Connections. If you have any other questions you'd like us to answer, be sure to tweet Flo at Flo Villeminot. And be sure to check out previous shows on our website as well, france24.com.